This is Ari Armstrong, freecolorado.com. We're with Paul Jacob. How you doing? Thanks for coming out to the Sammys.
Well, I'm doing well, and it's pretty exciting to see all these great activists from around the country. And yourself included.
And Mr. Jacob will be introducing me later tonight, so that's truly my honor for him to be giving an introduction to me. So thank you for that.
It's a pleasure.
So your main group is putting out the Common Sense work. Is that true? Is that basically your main?
Well, my main job really is president of Citizens in Charge and the Citizens in Charge Foundation, and we work to protect and expand the ballot initiative process, where regular citizens can put reform measures on the ballot, can hold government accountable, can work directly to take issues to the public without having to beg and plead legislators or other politicians to do it for us. So that's my main effort. I do a radio commentary and an email letter called Common Sense that talks about those kinds of issues, but all kinds of issues that basically hover around citizen control of government. That's the answer, is for citizens to really be in control of their government, and so I highlight citizens like yourself who do things that hold government accountable, and try to show my readers and listeners that they can do it too.
Before we go into detail, tell us your web pages and how to contact your information and learn more about what your group is up to.
Well, Common Sense, you can go to the website thisiscommonsense.com. Thisiscommonsense.com, and not only today's, I do it every day, Monday through Friday, but I've done 2,300 different commentaries thus far, so they're all there on the website. Citizensincharge.org is the website for Citizens in Charge and the Citizens in Charge Foundation, and people can find out all kinds of things about ballot initiatives in their state, what's happening around the country on what issues are being put on the ballot, what fights are in legislatures to try to expand the process, or usually too often legislators trying to restrict and wreck the process.
Well, in Colorado at the ballot level, we've had some votes that have restrained state spending and some votes that have increased it. So it's been a mixed bag to a certain degree. How do you respond to the argument that a pure democracy is not really the way to go, and that we want the part of the division of powers includes elected representatives making at least some of those decisions rather than it being going to a popular vote? So, in other words, should there be restrictions to popular vote, and if so, what should they be?
I like the Constitution. I like the Bill of Rights. I like government, whether it's by what some people call direct democracy, which I don't like that term because I don't think it's accurate, but whether it's voters voting on an initiative or legislators voting on a bill, I believe they should be constrained by limits on government, like the Bill of Rights, like constitutional restrictions. But I don't believe that we're going to get big government by letting the people vote on issues. I think it's the best way to check big government. And for instance, in Colorado, I can't remember what the measure was. I want to say it was 25, but it was educational spending, and it increased dramatically educational spending. Public tends to be for educational spending. They haven't held the education lobby accountable. And that's a big problem. But that's a problem whether you're an initiative state or a legislative state where there is no initiative. You've also passed the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, which I see as the most important check on government growth, out-of-control government growth, anywhere in the country. And that is nearly impossible to do through a legislature, but you can get people to do it. I look at term limits. You hardly can get that through a legislature. And in fact, the only legislatures that passed it after it was winning time and time again at the ballot box in initiative states. So the initiative process is not only critical to get past the resistance of politicians and special interests, but it's also essential to bring those ideas up because they spread to the non-initiative states. We're standing in Illinois, which has a pinhole of an initiative process. Almost everything you'd like to do by initiative, you can't. And yet, and there's a lot of states like that, frankly. Most of the states in the country, 24 have the initiative, 26 do not. So, but I look back like Prop 13. I would argue that Proposition 13 in California, the property tax rollback and capping the rate of increase in the future, was more important in kicking off the tax revolt. And did more good, not only in California, but across the whole country, than all of the bad initiatives ever passed by misguided voters at the time in the 100-plus year history of the initiative process. In other words, it can be a double-edged sword, but so often, if you want to expand the power of government, if government doing more is popular with the people, politicians are not going to stop and say, no, I don't want more power. On the flip side, though, if you want to rein in government power, it's very difficult to do that and to get that ball rolling through legislatures. You need the initiative process. So I think I am not afraid of issues that I don't like getting a vote. I think in the end we have a lot more reason to trust the average voter than we have to trust that the politicians and experts in government are going to have our best interest at heart.
Well, thanks for that insight. I'd like to switch gears for just a moment. One of your earlier issues was opposition to the draft, which clearly isn't as big of a political hot potato today.
But largely it's not, because there's a real consensus against the draft at this point, not only because the volunteer army has been such a wild success, but also because I think people realize that if we allow the government to conscript our young people, then we lose a real check on the foreign policy of our government, and that we've destroyed freedom in a sense, and that people are more than willing to defend that freedom. So it's I think what people did during Vietnam, and I was certainly post-Vietnam, but I think the fights that we made showed that the public, one, is going to resist conscription, but two, that they're not resisting conscription because they don't want to defend the country. We love the country. We'll defend it in a heartbeat because we believe in the freedom. But I remember the words of Ronald Reagan, which were, the draft or draft registration destroys the very values our society is committed to defending. And I think that that's pretty much the consensus today.
I believe your early work actually has brought the conservatives over to the self-ownership side, or the side where people have the right to decide.
I think it did, and I wouldn't say my work, because I played a minor role, I think, but the work of thousands and thousands and thousands of people who either took risks, as I did, who paid a price in resisting, whether they went to jail or whether they stood up and spoke out at a time when maybe they knew they were going to get some backlash.
And am I correct? Did you actually spend a little bit of time in prison for your principal position?
I did. In fact, I have the dubious distinction of serving the most prison time of anyone post-Vietnam, although it was a very short period of time, relatively, 5.5 months in federal re-education camp, and I like to think that I failed in being re-educated. So,
well, I think it's hardly fair for you to be introducing me this evening. Looking back on that, would you have done it again?
Yes. For a number of reasons. I felt like what I was doing was right. I've been through this recently, this battle in Oklahoma where they wanted to put me in jail for 10 years for running a petition drive. It was a ridiculous thing. Charges eventually dismissed. It's wonderful to win that. And people would say, well, thank you for having the courage to fight that fight. But I had no choice, really. They came after me. On the draft, I could have quietly just not registered. Instead, I stood up and fought it, and I'm prouder of that than anything I think I've ever done.
Listen, it is truly my deep honor to meet you this evening. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Ari.